Alright, we should be good. So this is basically going to be 488 GT3 at Donington. I think we can get, it's about 1:30 a lap. So if we're doing like 10-minute runs, that's going to be roughly about, I think, 6 time laps in terms of... Ooh, hello. Let's move that off of there. Trying to bring the lap chart up. So we'll do... I think 6 time laps will be okay. I might do a couple more towards the end. Just because I want to explain a couple of things about things like camber. Because I was messing around with something with actually 911 stuff, both the 911 Cup and the RSR, and I noticed something with regards to with these short runs. Basically, they're always telling you that having a ton of camber in the car, like 6 degrees, is basically going to be fastest. And I think for qualifying and things like that, that's definitely true. But what I noticed is that there's about a point, especially with front camber, where if you start going over 4 degrees, then you start to run into this area where you just basically get this drop off in performance. And it's not immediately noticeable, but you can kind of see it in how the run sort of trends. I would say for like the slower cars, it's not really a big deal. So say for things like we did with like the Mazda, the Spec Racer Ford, and those kind of cars, I think they're fine. And I think they're fine on the basis that they just don't generate enough heat for it to be a problem. I feel like it's definitely a heat problem, and it basically affects faster cars. It seems to be that when if you look at the in garage temps, when they get to like 110C, I feel like there's a drop in performance at that point. And basically the camber only makes that worse. And it makes it worse because you just end up running on the inside edge like that, and you just hit that edge and basically screw it up. And hey Cal, what's going on? But we'll do 6 baseline laps, and then we'll go from there. But I would also like to make a note on fuel. So how this series works is it's 40-minute races, but you're limited on fuel. So you have to stop. You don't ever want to change tires because 40 minutes is just not... You can easily run an hour on tires in these cars and it just not be a problem at all. Basically, in the endurance races, you're going to want to double stint them and things like that. So taking the tires is also not done at the same time as taking the fuel. So basically, it's just... you're going to go a little bit faster, but you're going to lose like 30 seconds or more in taking the tires, so it's just not worth doing. But you obviously do need to stop and you do need to take fuel. So just as a little quick thing, I went and looked at kind of, you're limited to 55 litres in this car, and going from that and then just doing a couple laps to get a usage, and just taking a rough estimate of like 1 minute 28 second laps, I worked out that you're gonna end up doing about 28 laps, because you've got time for like 27 and a quarter, which means that you're gonna end up doing 28. I don't think there's much chance of it going to 29, although I would definitely test it yourself just to be safe. And for me, I would need to add at least 16 litres. Now, given that it's 2.5 litres a lap, if you wanted to be safe, I would say that for the first race that you do, I would definitely do 20 litres, because then you know you're probably not going to be wrong. But anyway, let's do a 6-lap run on base, and then we'll go from there. And I really need to come up with a better way of doing the scene switching, because the amount of times I forget to change it is just horrendous. And then you don't get to see me actually driving the car, and also it's presumably then really bad for like the video on demand stuff that then goes on YouTube afterwards, because like the screen's blank for like 10 minutes. This is kind of a bit of a strange car. in the sense that I noticed on both the GTE and the GT3, the steering kind of feels numb. And I don't really know why that is. I presume that's just how basically the car's set up. And that's a deceptively tricky corner in this thing as well. One thing to keep in mind with the GP layout is that there is a decent amount of time to be sort of gained in this chicane, but there is a slowdown penalty if you cut it too much. And I don't know how it is now, but a couple of years ago we found that, especially if, say, you're an Australian racing on a European server, or you're doing the opposite, like a European on an Australian server, basically your margin on those slowdowns is much smaller. So you kind of at a little bit of a disadvantage because you can't cut as much. The corner I would say is most difficult in this car is definitely the old hairpin right here. And I don't actually know why it's difficult. It just feels like the car always wants to come around going through there. I feel like some of it might be due to me having driven quite a lot of GTE cars and kind of expecting a similar level of grip from the GT3, and it's basically not there. They always just kind of feel a bit lazier compared with the GTs. And in some ways they're more forgiving, and in other ways they're actually a lot less forgiving. Wow, that's not right. I never saw blue sky. Yeah, I know, right? It's actually been nice here recently. Like, this is really only like an hour away from me. Although, I do think like a 25 Celsius like air temp is particularly optimistic. And it's something to keep in mind, actually, that I would expect I do all my testing in default, and I would definitely expect the official weather to be colder than this. Because like Tommy says, it's never this hot. This is also a car that I kind of feel like is probably not my best. So please keep that in mind. Like right there, that was pretty lame.
1 minute 28.2.
I definitely would say that the braking is the trickiest thing with this car. It just generally feels like the rear is just unstable. That right-hander, you can cut a lot more off than that. You can really get over the inside curb. And as you can probably see, the off-tracks are quite surprising that we made that. They're quite lenient at this track. I'm also pretty sure that the gear stack for this is far too long. I'm pretty sure we're not getting into 6th at all. And Tommy, when you said something isn't right, I was like, oh no, what if I forgot? Like I didn't know if you were all looking at a black screen or something. Okay, that's just strange. So I've had John say that I look a lot more serious than he expected. I'm just waiting for when there's a big rage moment at some point and then that gets clipped out. I feel like I'll never hear the end of that then. It should probably be this weekend actually when we run Indy 500. We're actually going to end up running 2 Indy 500s. We're going to run the official on Saturday and then we're going to run the majors on Sunday. You know, I think we'll do 5 time laps because I already feel like I've been out here forever. For me personally, I feel like the area where I'm going to gain the most time with this car is basically sorting out the brakes. It feels really, really nervous to me on the brakes. And that always kind of messes me up a lot. Alright, so that's 5 times. Also, I apologize if you can hear like the shifter pedals. There's not really anything I can do about it. They're kind of just loud by nature. Right, so we will add up the lap times. And I will bring OBS back up. Ta-da! You can also kind of see the first laps I did and how kind of bad they were. Alright, okay, so pretty much average is like 28 flat. That seems reasonable. I probably could have hit the first 2 maybe a little better. But anyway, we've got a decent place to start from. De Blasio, hey! How you doing? So kind of first thing that I'm gonna look at really is, we said the gearing was way off. we seem to have a bunch of different options in terms of gear, but they're not really very descriptive on what they are. You have, I guess, FIA, IMSA Daytona, IMSA Short, and Ferrari Challenge. I have no idea what Ferrari Challenge is. I'm gonna guess that Daytona is gonna be super long, so we're probably not gonna want that. We're on FIA, which already seems long, so we're gonna go down to IMSA Short, and we'll probably take a look at everything from there. Is Trigger hitting on you? I don't know. I guess so. In terms of what I want to start with, in terms of air pressure, we can go down to 20, but we're starting at 22 currently. So I think we'll leave that, and then we'll probably come back to that later on. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my usual thing with cambers. Now, I'm going to zoom them straight to 4 and 3. And the reason I'm going straight to 4 and 3 is because on what I've been messing with recently... Oh, okay, I can only go out to 3.9. That's cool. 56.4. What I've found is that a lot of stuff with... This is going to sound a bit strange. Basically, if the wheels are driven, you can't run as much camber on road course stuff anyway. It seems to just basically kill you in terms of getting traction out of corners. So in a lot of the stuff that I've been messing with, like the Porsche 911 setups, they're all now. I found the best results kind of work with 3 degrees camber at the rear and 4 at the front. Now you can go way higher on certain cars. Like on this, you can seemingly only go out to like 3.7 or roughly 3.7. Okay. On things like the GTE cars, you can go all the way to 6, and it's really good for 1 lap. Like it really is extremely fast, but it kind of dies like after that a little bit. In fact, I wouldn't normally do this because this is kind of info that I've been sort of working on for myself, which sounds a bit how'd you say it? I don't know, a bit selfish, but this is something that I've been working on for me with 911 RSR tests at here you go. That is a bunch of tests with camber at Road Atlanta from 911 RSR, and literally this right here is why I don't kind of want to do like a hot... If I was going to do a stream on it, I'd literally have to do like a whole stream on camber on one car and just go from there. But this is what I spend my spare time doing, just tests with camber in the RSR. And you can kind of see from this that like the baseline starts at 4 and 4, and that was actually quite good. And I kind of came to the conclusion that 4 and 3 was really good, on the basis of if you look at the variance in lap time, right, of column E. I don't know if you can see the cursor. Okay, you can. Now the hot lap is not so great. Like it's only a 16.8, right? Thereabouts. But the variance of it is the smallest of basically any run, and that's kind of a good indicator of one how easy it is to drive, 2 what the drop off is like, and 3 it kind of sort of gives you an idea a bit as to sort of how the tires sort of doing stuff. And you can see that like you start with a 16.9, and then on lap 8 I was doing a 16.8. Now if you look at the 6 and 5 camber at the very far end, like it starts off absolutely blisteringly fast with a 16.5, and it ends on a 16.8.99. But if you look at the laps before it, like okay, I was in a 17.2. Now don't get me wrong, I think I could basically figure out a way to drive it, and it would be a little better than this. But you can see that it's harder to drive. It's harder to drive, and it's actually dropping off a lot more. Like it's with the 4 and 3, it basically didn't change in speed over 8 laps. With the 6 and 5, it was dropping like 4/10 slower. And what I noticed was that it was really related to kind of where the temps got to, and it seems like 110C is really a bad sort of point. But you can also see that when it comes to cambers and things like that, that if you're gonna go for like a really high camber setup, just go all in, because if you look, like the 5 and 4 was slower, and then the 4, 5, and 3 was a lot slower, and the 4, 5, and 3 was slower because it basically unbalanced the car. But this is where my sort of idea of 4 and 3 comes from. And that's why we're gonna do. We're only allowed, I think, yeah, we're only allowed 3-7 at the front, so we're gonna do 3-7 and 2-7. We're gonna start off with a 1 degree split, and you also got to watch that the toes don't change a bunch. And I feel like they did. I feel like the rear toes just changed. Yeah, see, there you go. It went from 0.2 to 1. So we'll reset that back. And I am reading the chat. I wanted to get like that whole spiel out first before I forgot it, basically. Okay, so we got 3-7, 3-7. And we will now go for another run. But I need to make sure that I'm on display cap. Alright, there we go. And thank you, I appreciate it. The hair is rather extreme. You know what's funny is that I actually didn't used to like comb my hair at all when I used to just race without the face cam. But when I was testing it, I realized it looks absolutely ridiculous if it's not combed on face cam. So it's added more work to my day having to actually comb my hair. Oh, I am. But I am glad that you guys all like it, like the hair, the face cam, because I was really skeptical about it at first. But if people think it adds value, then I guess it can stay. Also, I would say for a lot of road stuff in general, for longer run pace, I've never really found a lot of success going over 4 degrees of front camber. And up until very recently, I basically used to run 4 degrees in the front and 2.5 in the rear on basically every car. Never knew what I looked like. Well, now you do. The gear stack change seems to have made a decent difference too. But I appreciate all you guys hanging out and everything, and I hope you get something from these streams. 'Cause the racing ones are kind of, I can understand why people watch those, but I'm hoping people get something out of these setup ones. I've had people messaging me saying nice stuff, so I appreciate all of that. And I'm glad that it's helping, even if only a few. I don't know if it's proof that I'm not an alien. Depending on what you think does and doesn't look good, I guess.
5.
I still don't like how the rear end slides around on this. Now, I feel like you can definitely cut a lot more off that chicane, but I'm kind of trying not to, on the basis that I feel like I don't want to be responsible for encouraging people to cut a ton off and then they start getting slowdowns and then they start getting mad. Because you got to remember that, like, with when you're testing, so like this is done through beta UI. When you're testing, you've got no latency to the server or anything. It's all ran on your own PC, so you can definitely cut a lot more before you'll get a slowdown penalty. So do keep that in mind. In fact, it's actually worth it for, especially a track like this where the slowdown penalties are really severe and they're in a place of kind of big gains, that you might want to just hop into, like, I don't know, an Australian server or whichever server farm's the furthest away from you, and just kind of do some laps. And that will give you an idea of how much margin you do and don't have. So we'll probably take a look at traction control and stuff like that.
27.57.
Yeah, there's kind of two schools of thought on the traction control. I know that Sai, when we used to work on stuff, he was always really big on basically setting the car up so loose that you pretty much had to use the traction control to drive it. And you would sort of sit on the traction control and abuse it on corner exits. I'm of the opposite kind of opinion. I want as little traction control as possible, mainly because in a lot of cases I kind of think that it's crap and I can do a better job.
1 minute 27.86.
So it's, again, I think it's one of those things where you've either got to commit to one direction to doing it. I don't think there's necessarily a right and wrong, but like a lot of things, it's a case of you can't halfway them. So it's the same way really with anything with downforce to an extent. It's usually always better to either go one way or the other. That was scary. I'll read that in a second, Adam. Alright, so that's the second group of 5.
27.58.
Time for... Yeah, I was. Hey man, it's like, it's good info. Like, if you're not racing and you can, like, watch what other people are doing, like, yours is great because it shows me all the lap times and everything, so I know exactly who's fast. Center stab. I mean, my throttle input's kind of weird. I feel like I could be smoother on him. Right, so that was short gear, 3.7, 2.7 camber. I feel like being smooth on the throttle is better, personally. But sometimes I get a little excited. So I think a little bit of that was driving, a lot of it was the camera and the gear there that got the speed. So I will save that as our well, it'll be race. I know I've said it before, but I always name things incorrectly. No, I always name them with the seasons attached so that I know what's what, basically. The little bit of interesting thing about this is that we're actually wearing front tires more, which is surprising because it doesn't really feel like that in terms of how it's driving. But there is a bunch of front air pressure build, which is intriguing. So we're gonna go down a pound on that to try and equalize out all the air pressures a little bit, and that's gonna fail on ride heights. Yep. And now, very important, we're gonna put our LED strips to purple because why not? Do you see stuff better in metric or US? It depends. When it comes to road course stuff, when I've worked with people, everybody normally uses metric, so I always sort of default to that for road stuff. For oval, it's the opposite. I go the other way. I always use US on oval. The one thing that I do always prefer is I always prefer looking at my air pressures in PSI. Just KPA is just like, I understand it and I can if I need to, but just looking at air pressure and PSI makes way more sense to me because that's what I've always done. One thing I do like a lot more in metric is toes. I way prefer being able to see my toe in like millimeters than I do in 64ths and crap like that. I mean, neither's right or wrong. It's just whatever you prefer, really. So we're going down a pound on that. I should try going up on caster. The one thing that I've noticed about GT3 cars is they have a ton of caster adjustment. But I'm always big on saying that caster's good, so We're going to try it. Okay, we're not going to try that on the basis of how low it's just put the cambers. And this is actually a something to keep in mind, that a lot of these adjustments kind of cross over each other. So, like your caster, your camber, and your toe, generally given how the arrangement is on the car, when you change one thing, it's going to change something else, which makes it, at best, a pain in the ass to just sort of go through. Because like you can see here, like the toe's gone up to 4.6, but if I cancel it, you can see how the toe goes back to 0.2, and the camber's at 3.7 again, right? And it's just basically how the suspension is constructed, that everything sort of gets in the way of each other. And the thing I would say with caster and camber is that if you can still get to the point that you want on camber, then keep increasing the caster. But if you can't get to, like in this case where say you go out to, you max out the caster and it goes to like 14.7, but well, it goes to 15.3. But then your max camber only like is this is crazily low. Like 1.5 of static is really low. So I would definitely not do that. And in this case I would prioritize the camber over the caster. So actually we're gonna try something intriguing here. And this is where kind of some experimentation is needed per car, because like on this, like as I was saying, I wanted to get out to 4 and 3 on the cambers, right? But I've only been able to do 3.7. Now, if I go down on caster, I'm gonna be able to get what I want for like static camber. See, so there, like, so I guess what I'm gonna try is I'm gonna try whatever gives me 4.0 on camber, which I believe is like 9.7. Okay, it's 9.6. Okay, it's less than 9.6 apparently. Why is this frustrating at times? I bet that'll change that. Right, okay, so you get 9, 5, and 4. So we're going to try that. And we're also going to bump up the rear to 3. So we've got 4 in the front, 3 in the rear, and we've got 9, 5 on the caster. I don't expect this is going to make a huge difference, to be honest. Because that's quite a small change. You would really need to kind of do it in a big swing to get where you want. I really need to learn how to pull out of the pit box with these cars. So we'll try and put 5 down again and we'll see where we're at. Hey man, what's going on? See, right there, that was only an off track, but I'm pretty sure that would have been a slowdown in a proper session. Global warming or global cooling. Oh, I don't engage in that kind of debate, man. I feel like if there's any gains from this, it's actually probably going to be more from the little increase in rear camber. Or it might just be slower. There's that option too.
Minute 27.49.
The other thing I've not messed with at all is the wing and the rear heights. That'll probably be next. Pretty sketch. When that happened, I always kind of like to brake sort of at the top of the hill. Found downhill braking zones on iRacing to be really tricky. So if I can avoid starting on a downhill, I always like to. You definitely turn in earlier if that would happen. I mean, look at that. You can take like a ridiculous amount of off track there. I think with like sort of the uniqueness of how the caster is on this car, that there's probably a lot of experimentation required to find what the right balance of static camber versus caster is. Which, to be honest, is probably a little bit beyond the scope of this. Like, it'd be a bit like the RSR camber tests, where they take too long to really put on video. But it might be something that if I get time next week, I'll look at a lot more, because I feel like there's a decent bit of time in that. Alright, one more.
1 minute 27.22.
How hard are you hitting the bollard on the right? Oh, I'm probably absolutely, like, demolishing it. But they're not there, so that's kind of the problem, that the bollards aren't proper objects. I don't think they need to be the barrels. They could do it being something though. Something that's detrimental to cut that much off. But I don't want the barrels. Because can you imagine how bad that's going to be if somebody gets stuck in that chicane like that?
1 minute 27.38.
Kind of threw away everything I had in that last sector right there. Yeah. I mean, actually, let's take a look how hard we're hitting him. Because I feel like I monstered them on that lap. Hey, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Probably rear chase is best, isn't it? With a little bit of zoom out. I mean, those ones I don't. The left-hander I don't, really. Oh, yeah. Completely cleaning them out. It's pretty funny, actually. Alright, so let's take a look at the lap times from that. And actually, let's have a quick look at air pressures first. So we were closer on getting, like, front and rear equal on that. I do feel like that might be a hair low, just because of how, if you can kind of see it a little bit in terms of like how the lap time comes about. In the basically the lower you're gonna go on air pressure, within reason, the better your long run pace is gonna be because of just how the air pressure builds up, and you'll like with the 911. What I've been trying to do is I've been trying to find that kind of point where it's best halfway through the race. So that's kind of what I'd be wanting to do with, say, this car but it's like halfway through the race would be 20 minutes, and I'm not gonna do that, and because it would just take too long. But that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for. Like I'd be doing runs that were like half race length, and then from that I'd be looking at what kind of tails off, what sort of evens off, and what's fastest on like that midway through the run sort of point, and that's then what I then base my air pressure targets around. And like you can see on this, you can see like the first lap out was a 48, then a 50, then a 39, then 21, and I kind of went a bit easy on the last one for whatever reason. I don't know why, and around that 38, but you can see that clearly the first lap is not the fastest, and I don't feel like I'm going too easy. And that's cool, Adam. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you watching. And you too, Tommy. That's cool. All these go on YouTube afterwards anyway, and there is a playlist of all of them on YouTube. So if you do want to watch them afterwards, like you can't watch them live or whatever, or you want to skip all the rambling bits, totally fine. You can go to YouTube and do that. But anyway, we will log the laps now finally. So that was Canva 4030. I don't know what the caster was. 95. That is one hell of a name. And I also can't see where my thing is. There we go. I feel like these are going to be very similar. Yeah, oh, okay, so it was faster than I thought it was. So that's cool. We'll definitely save that then. I'm a little bit surprised at that, because I didn't think it was that much better. I feel like some of that is me driving it better. Let's just take a quick look at the consistency of it. Yeah, okay, so variance was... And this is why I like using this variance thing. Because even though it doesn't really... It's weird, it doesn't tell you anything as such, other than what kind of your lap time spread is. So I find it helpful in that regard, because I basically use it as a way of sort of judging what both the drop off is like on ovals, and also how hard it is to drive, because the greater the variance is, either the greater the drop off is, or the harder it is to drive, or a combination of both, basically. I'll read that 1 second. So I was wondering if you knew how to fix this. When I'm in the car or on replay, I can only see 20 cars in front and 4 behind. Isn't that just a max? Isn't that in here? Isn't that just a max cars thing? Like in graphics? Like, is that not literally just max cars here? Like in the low left corner? I feel like that's all that is. Alright, so I feel like air pressure and stuff is kind of where we want. In terms of what other things we can change, we can go through a ton of stuff on anti-roll bars and things. In terms of wing, we are at 5, and oh, okay, you can only go between 0 and 5. Thanks. But I suppose 5 it is then. I was actually gonna want to go up on that. I have it maxed at 63 and I still can't see. I don't know. Like, I want to help, but that was like literally all I know what to do. So put a support ticket in. Like, seriously, there's probably some weirdness that you just haven't got clicked, and that'll fix it. But I can see how that would be annoying. The other thing I kind of like to keep a bit of track of is wear percentages when it comes to road stuff. Like, usually if I kind of don't always do this, because outright pace is more important than what the wear numbers are, right? And you should always do that. Like, if the times say it's better, go with what the times say. Don't go with like a preconceived this must be better. Just go with what the times say. But usually for me, I find that on things like this, if I can kind of see like a relatively even split in terms of wears and things. So like we got 93, 95, 98, so that's like 2%, 3%. You got like 2%, 1% in the rear. I only get worried if I see like huge splits in these numbers. Like, if I saw 87%, then like 94, 96, then I'd be like, okay, that's probably something I want to do something about. But anyway, I'm gonna mess with springs a little bit now, because we can go down to 180. So we're just gonna we're gonna do like we did with the BMW. We're gonna experiment with going to the lower end of springs. In general, I kind of like to run the softest spring I can get away with before I start hitting the track. We've got a bit more scope in the rear. We got 270s, and we can go down to 180s. I'm going to drop that 2 clicks. I'm going to go down to 210, so that I've got a little bit of adjustment if I want it. And then I always reset ride heights as well. Oh, actually, did I make sure that you can see? Yes, I did. Especially for smooth. Especially when it comes to front heights, generally my feeling on front heights and springs is that you should kind of always, except there's some really weird cases, but in general, running the lowest initial starting height and then basically the softest spring you can get away with that doesn't hit the racetrack is usually a good place to start. And then kind of use the rear in terms of heights and springs to sort of set the balance. So for example, I think on the RSR, at the moment I'm one click up from the softest spring because I was hearing it like hit the front end of the car on the track, so. Gonna drop the traction control down, I think. Well, I think that's... I can't remember which way around it is. Sometimes they're the opposite way around, so I'll have to check when I get out. And some cars have it set up where, like, the lower you are on the traction control numbers, the more traction control you have, and some are the opposite way around. And I mean, if anybody has any cues or anything specific they want, like, looking at, just let me know.
One minute 27.1.
I feel like there I might have just spun the wheels a little bit. I'm pretty happy with how the balance is right now, actually. So I might leave the. Yeah, that was interesting. Probably should have not been talking while I was trying to do that. I'll probably leave the rear springs as they are, just so that then if anybody else messes with it themselves, they have the option of going down one more click. It's not going to break anything by doing that. It's potentially like a little tiny bit of speed there that will be left on the table, but fundamentally it won't break everything.
Minute 27.25.
He'll probably mess with some diff settings next. I feel like I might be able to gain a little bit just messing with the preload some. I know I keep picking up a 1x there, but I'm really not gaining a lot from it. And to be honest, if I was racing, I'd probably still do that anyway. That was a bit sketch. That's probably very borderline.
Minute 27.17.
Alright. So that was softer springs, and I'm pretty sure that's kind of really all we did. It just gives you a bit more compliance over curbs and things like that, and it might gain like a little bit of front downforce, because pretty much my view on it is that if it, like the static starting height minimum, it's not hitting the ground like when it travels with whatever spring you've got in there, then basically you want to put, it's kind of, it depends on how aero sensitive the car is, but on something like this, generally the softer you can go on the spring before it starts hitting the track, the faster it gets, because you just start getting lower front heights and better aero from it. On some of the really high downforce stuff, it becomes more important to actually keep the thing from like doing like this and like moving all over the place, rather than having like absolute closest like minimum heights and stuff like that. So, like I know on the 919, I messed around with like front springs in that car for ages, and basically what I ended up at the time just kind of accepting was that I wasn't getting like an absolutely perfectly like ultra low like height for X amount of the lap, but because the height was way more consistent, it was just faster because I guess the downforce was more consistent. So it's something to keep in mind on really high downforce cars. On stuff like this, it's not really a big deal. You gain more from just having the softer spring and the lower heights and stuff. And you just get a bit more compliance. That actually picked up more time than I thought. I think a lot of that was confidence in the car though. But we'll save it and we'll overwrite what we had. Now, let me just check you can see this. Oh, actually, I didn't show the desktop. I didn't show the times. No. All right, there you go for times. You can see it was faster, but it was. I think I really feel like it was faster just because I felt like I'd lean on the car more, and I just had more consistency out of just the handling balance, and that was why. But if we go back to the iRacing screen. Okay, yeah, cool. I was worried the JRT box would be like covering up this stuff at the bottom here with diff settings and that. Basically, like in this car, you got two settings. You got clutch plates and preload. Now, the more preload you have is basically you're gonna get more off throttle understeer and you're gonna get more on throttle oversteer. So it's strange because the effects start going in really wacky if you run really low preload. And in general, I found that it seems to work better if you work from the top down. So like this is on 115, and okay, so you can go to 200. I have race stuff which has 0 in it before, but essentially that's how it works. The higher you have it, the more on throttle oversteer you'll get, like when you initially like kick up the throttle, and the more off throttle understeer you'll get, which I think is actually why I'm having to do that, kind of playing with the throttle in the middle of the corner. And usually actually that's a good way of telling if your diff settings are basically broke, is that if you notice that you're getting really different cornering behavior based on like whether you're riding the throttle or not, if you've got the option to change diff settings, that's what you should look at, because that's what I find helps a ton with those kind of scenarios. Really, you want it where the car is no different in terms of handling balance, where like on or off the throttle. Like you don't want a scenario where like when you're on the throttle it's just wanting to like spin, and then when you're off the throttle it's trying to push to the outside. I feel like the radical fix setups have a problem with that, or the last time I drove them they did. So it's definitely something you want to look at. And basically what the clutch plates do is the clutch plates just act like a multiplier of everything in the diff. So you can basically mess with them to get more or less exaggerated effects and things. In general, I've actually found it's not a bad idea to actually run relatively high number of plates. I don't know why, so to speak. It's just something I noticed. And hey man, what's going on? When you start going like too low on the preload, you get like really weird weird handling effects. Well, not just preload, but basically when you don't have enough diff lockup, you get really weird handling effects. Like you'll just feel like you have like no drive out of corners and stuff. So generally, I like to work from the top down. So like we're at 115 now. I feel like we've got off throttle understeer, and then a little bit of on throttle oversteer out of like the hairpins and stuff. So I'm gonna drop down to 100. And we'll try that. In fact, actually, no. I'm gonna make a huge swing on that just so that hopefully you can kind of see more of what it does. Let's go down to 75. Yep, I'm on the right thing. Cool. Oh, we'll have some tea. So what we should have now is we should have sort of more off throttle turn. But it might manifest itself in terms of sort of spinning out into like corners like this. Basically, if you're too low on it, you will just start losing drive out of corners, and you'll have the rear trying to overtake the front when you're coming off the brakes and stuff. Well, that was definitely nothing to do with the car. That was just me completely blowing the corner. It does take a bit of like trial and error to figure out what settings certain cars like though. And it gets even more of a headache when you have the option to do change ramp angles and stuff. Like, you can see it a little bit on the Delta that it rotates better in the really slow speed corners because there's less lockup. But then there's less drive off when you actually do get to the throttle. It's actually most kind of noticeable
27.2.
in the last two hairpins, really. Kind of balls that up a bit.
1 minute 27.09.
Yeah? Ha. I told you it'd be something like dumb like that. I don't know why stuff like that happens, you know. It's just weird, ain't it? At least you got it fixed, though. So yeah, if you're having problems trying to figure out why you can't see everybody on track, but your max cars and stuff is set to 63 in game, open your .ini and check that it actually does say 63.
Minute 27.19.
Ah, fuck. It should have been a pretty good lap up until that. So I realized I'm probably not actually going hard enough on the brakes on this, because I forget that it has ABS. So I'm like conscious of locking them up, but then obviously never do lock them up, because kinda can't.
Minute 27.3.
It was going to be a good lap at the end, and then it kind of went downhill. I'll add up the times anyway, but I feel like that's more of a... It's going to be a little bit of a preference adjustment. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, no, alright. I lost track of where I was. Yeah, so a little slower, but some of that is definitely preference. But it felt like it definitely rotated the hairpins better, but then in doing so it gives up some drive off. I think I will combine that with another change. So I think I'll try clutch plate 6 with. I'll probably keep the preload at 75 whilst I do another thing. Right, let me check out what the traction control is. Right, okay, so one is the most support. The 6 is off apparently. And ABS is. And setting 1 has the most. No, sorry. Setting 1 has the least, setting 10 has the most. Okay, so it's at 7. I'm probably not going to change that. I'm going to move my traction control to 3. Right. I've not messed with any anti-roll bar stuff yet. I found that a lot of cars like having stiff bars in them, so I'm going to try a large front bar. We're going to try a medium rear bar and see how that goes. Need to make sure I don't overdo the fuel because we're limited to 55. At least I'm pretty sure it's limited to 55. Okay, so yeah, I didn't realize I'd not changed it back. But yeah, we're gonna try large front bar, medium rear, and clutch plate 6. But we're gonna leave the preload where it was, and we'll go from there. Whoa. That I wasn't expecting. Move the traction control back down, I think, to 2. It doesn't seem to be a great fan of having a big rear bar, this car. I know in the past other cars have really liked having like really small rear bars in GT3. I'm sure something that I raced at one point had the rear bar actually disconnected. Can't remember what it was though, it might have been the Audi. It's quite possible that this is similar.
1:27.21. Minute 27.22.
Can't say I'm a big fan of this handling balance wise. I wonder if there's actually an option to disconnect the rear bar on this car. I might give that a go. It just feels kind of like too stiffly sprung almost at the moment.
1:20.
Like I know I always like to say like I don't ever really want like the nose to move at all, but it kind of feels too extreme. I'll let the lap time be like the judge though. Helps when you don't miss corners too. Kind of wondering where I've gone wrong with that hairpin, because I feel like I've gotten slower as we've gone on. I don't think it's set up, I think it's just how I'm driving it, where I've got worse in the hairpins for some reason.
27.13.
Still didn't get it. Minute 27.15. Alright. Yeah, not sure about that. I definitely feel like it's one of those cars where it just like doesn't like any rear bar in it for whatever reason. I do remember people say this about like the R8 and stuff. And I remember all the R8 sets I used to have, they used to never have a rear bar in them. Wasn't really any slower, but it didn't feel as good for sure. Probably what we're gonna do is we'll revert it back to medium and small. And I'm going to try pulling up the rear heights some. We're going to go to 90 on rear heights. Oh, okay. So that's as high as we can go. Cool. That gives us a good place to work from, actually. I didn't realize I was basically at max rake on it. What I'm thinking here is that if this has promise, then but like it's too loose, what we'll do is we'll go back to the bigger front bar, and basically we'll use the front bar to sort of determine how the handling is. And I left the diff plates as they were because I feel pretty committed to that. But if it's still not good this run, then I'll probably reverse that as well. That probably explains why the bigger rear bar didn't help. I didn't realize we were quite like that high on rake. I probably just basically killed it. It's a little bit annoying that we went off there.
Minute 26.98.
A lot of this is kind of like feeling around to see sort of what changes do on new cars and things. And then once you've kind of got an understanding of roughly where things are at and what they do, is then kind of combining them together. So like right now, what I'm kind of thinking and what I'm trying to combine here is I'm trying to combine having like really high rake so that I've kind of got as much front downforce as possible. But then, knowing that stuff in iRacing doesn't seem to like a lot of roll at all, trying to run the front bar as stiff as I can without hurting like mid-corner performance, and then basically using the rear bar settings and the diff to basically allow that kind of setup to work.
1 minute 27.11.
But really, it's a bit of a bet on the little bit of increased downforce that you get from the higher rake is going to offset the fact that you've sort of compromised the rear suspension a bit to do it. And I suppose this is kind of the bit where we start moving away from just like, okay, what does stuff do, to how do we drive hairpins? No, to kind of building cars around like specific concepts. Like that was really what a lot of oval is about, to be honest. It's not so much what each individual thing does. It's about what happens when you pair them all up and try and get like a desired result. So I suppose what I'm trying to do here is basically get as much downforce on the car as I can. And betting on that giving me the most lap time. Yeah, I know, man. I got it right, like, to start with, and now I'm just... really, really lame through there. There we go.
1 minute 26.94.
Well, what you're doing generally with rake is that you're kind of shifting the aero balance forwards to try and get more downforce on the nose. So yeah, it definitely does, and that's why. And that's why I think, like, even on the baseline, there's like basically a ton of rake in it anyway, and that's why I think the rear anti-roll bar was so soft, to try and get some of that handling back, and just get the rear to have as much mechanical grip as possible. It was a there you go until I got excited there. I'm knocking that 4/10 off because that was literally me. And yeah, exactly. Well, maybe not exactly the same idea, but same kind of idea, I guess. I liked it like that though. It felt pretty good for me. Until I screwed up. No, I'm just gonna knock 4/10 off that last lap. Because that was nothing to do with setup, that was entirely me. And I just realised you can't see me tapping the laps. There you go. I mean, in fairness, even with the crappy lap, it was still faster, so... But that's what it should have been, roughly. I mean, let's... yeah, okay, let's put the genuine time in. But it's a shitty lap, so... I have to keep that in mind. I will save that, though, because I do think that was better. And what can we do in terms of shocks? So we're at 8 on shocks. feel like we could back off the high speed a little bit so that we can get over the curbs a touch better. I've put it back to the genuine times. You can't complain now. Still leaning on the front tires some though, which I don't like. So I would like to get off the front tires a little bit. Maybe we could try going down on the front bar a little. We'll try 6 on the bar. Try 5 on the high speed rebound and the front. We'll try 5 on the high speed comp in the rear. How low can we go? 0. So you can go 0 to 11. Let's make a biggest change and go 4. I feel like everything else is relatively okay. Though we did have success going up on high speed comp at other tracks, so let's try that. We'll leave the rear stuff though, because that didn't really work. Apparently I have a lot of Facebook messages to go through once we're done here. I did switch the scene back right, you can actually see the track and everything. Cool. Also, you have to be careful with the pit exit line here. You can end up with a slowdown if you use too much of it. That was really bad.
1 minute 27.13.
So now I feel like it's kind of yawing out coming out of the corners and stuff. Which I think the bar was helping with on that score. But we might also be back to the, like, diff settings again. To there. This feels like there's not really the traction that it needs.
One minute 26.89.
Even though we're going faster. Got Hydrate Bot looking out for me. I seem to have more luck running that corner like tight around the inside than I do trying to like sort of bomb into it.
Minute 27.06.
I think I need some of my diff preload back. I think that's what that like sort of yawing out on entry and exit is coming from. What does it do for me? I find that it just kind of determines sort of how, like the difference in how it handles on throttle compared with how it handles off throttle. I find that having not enough is way worse than having too much. Because not enough makes it kind of feel like the thing's wandering on corner entry. And then like it can't get the power down on exit. Like that. Like, I don't know if you see, like, the wheel kind of goes like, it's just like a slight movement, but enough to, like, lose your bite. And there, like, it just feels like it's not pulling the car out of the corner as it should do. Like, as though, like, a lot of energy's kind of wasted on spinning the inside.
1 minute 26.99.
We'll add them up. Realistically, this has to be like 4/10 better than the last one to be considered better. Yeah, see, it wasn't really like if that lap hadn't have been crappy, it wouldn't have actually been faster. And it has some slightly different shocks in it. I don't feel like the shocks were bad as such, but let's just I'm gonna go back to the good one and adjust from that. I definitely feel like this was faster. So you can go to 10 on the bar blades. And I feel like preload's too low. We're gonna go to 125 on preload. And just really kind of try and dial it in. Tempted to go up to 10 on the bar blades. I mean, I'm just gonna do it. And we'll see what happens. I am conscious of the fact that I do feel like it's leaning on the front tyres a good bit though. I mean, I could be wrong on going up on the plates. It might be worse. Like there, see it doesn't, well, it didn't do the kind of like the sort of shimmy thing. It just feels like it's now got more bite. That was a bit, I kind of lost my rhythm a little bit when it sort of turned more than I was expecting. That was a wicked corner.
1 minute 26.97.
Like, to me, it just feels like kind of the more diff preload you have, the more it sort of ties the car together. And there's less sort of wandering around. But it is definitely one of those things that's kind of like a bit awkward to set. Hello. To be honest, I kind of think at the moment, like, we've sort of reached a bit of a wall with this, which is okay.
1 minute 27.22.
Because we're kind of coming to the end anyway. That's a bit of an overdrive.
1 minute 27.1.
One thing I'm curious about is why I'm getting like that inside hop on curbs. I don't know whether I'm just trying to use more of the curbs now than I was originally, or if that's the thing I've actually built in. If I have built it, and I'm not sure how.
127.29.
I think I'm going to try one last thing after this. That's going to try going down on the front bar to sort of counter the rear diff some. So I think that now that that's really sort of tying the rear together, we can get away with running less front bar, and we can get some of the turn back without really hurting everything.
Minute 27.19.
So the handling was better like that, but I think it was just losing too much time in the corners, basically. Because you were having to sort of lift or crank on the wheel a bunch. It was giving up time like that. I bet the front tires are wearing more as well. Not as much as I thought, but it definitely feels like what the limiting factor is there. Oh, I've lost the thing. It's a little, like, disappointing that run, actually, because it felt really good on the first lap. And then it just kind of went, and didn't want to turn after that. So I'm gonna load that fastest one again. Which has got 8 bars in it. Now I'm gonna try the 125 preload, but with 6 bars, and see how it goes. And then this probably be the last one. Yeah, if I replace that time with a non-genuine time, that column I there would have been the fastest. Also, at this point, driver kind of needs a break. It's a bit weird how, like, if it was an endurance race, I could easily do like 4+ hours in the car without really feeling that bad. But when you're actually trying to think of, like, okay, what am I going to try next on the next run? What am I going to change? What am I going to do? Like, it becomes a lot more taxing. Yeah, that's true. I do always try and do that, like, in races and stuff, there will be moments where I'll, like, rest. Which sounds weird, but, like, I think you'll kind of get what I mean. That, like, you know, you can just sort of take a minute to sort of regroup and that. Whereas on this, it's like, no. Every run is, like, trying to get absolutely everything. Either for better or worse, I guess. Not to mention that you're kind of like trying to talk over it and explain it as well. Which it is a lot of fun, it's just really demanding. Like, this is pretty much gonna have been like 60 laps of outright trying to just do qualifying pace every time.
Minute 26.8.
Fuck. Just try to get just a hair too much right there.
Minute 27.08.
Hate that curb. So, the front bar seems to be really critical, and it kind of, at the moment I'm getting the impression that basically you want to try and run it like as low as you can stand with this kind of setup. So it really kind of depends on a combination of how brave you are and how keen you are to hold on to a really loose car. Because the looser you can hold on to it, the faster you're basically gonna be, to a point, obviously. Pretty much with how this is set up, like all the handling tuning is done sort of off the front bar. Like, right now I'd say this is pretty close to the limit as what I can handle. So you might want to consider running the bigger bars. Well, bigger bar. I wouldn't touch the rear one. Not with how this is, with like the high rake and everything. You really don't want any more rear roll stiffness.
Minute 26.99.
I was conscious of screwing up through there, like I did on the last run, which was good. I could maybe have done a better job there. Oh, I'll take it. That'll be decent. I really wanted the last run to be good. It's like I knew that like if I could actually hold it together, it was gonna be better. It is difficult though. I'm not gonna lie. This is a strangely tricky car to drive fast, I think. I'll save that though, because I do think that's the best one. Let me get the desktop up. Right. This better be faster. I'm sure it is, but like, you know. I want conclusive proof. Yes. Well, I think what I would say is that this is a surprisingly tricky thing to drive. And actually, I think all the GT3 cars are harder to drive fast than I think it is immediately obvious. I actually find it more natural to get speed out of the GTE cars than I do GT3, but I feel like we did make decent gains right there, and we did pull the average down by about a second, so that's pretty good. And the best time was also improved too, so that's good. But I do think I'm gonna leave it there, because yeah, I would kind of like a break because I need to do some cup stuff later. But I do hope that is gonna help somewhat. I do appreciate that it was a little bit disjointed, kind of about the point when we got to here is sort of where it kind of all got a bit murky as to what was actually making it better and stuff. But definitely the initial stuff, like the camber, the gear, the air pressure, the little bit of messing around with the springs and the caster and stuff like that. There was definitely that was definitely where most of the speed came from, and then the rest of it was kind of just sort of trying to work it around the idea of the high rake with the really kind of soft rear, and then kind of get it to drive around that. It's an interesting car though, I suppose. I do prefer the GTEs, but like it's okay. Um, my favorite GT3 car is a McLaren though, and I was kind of hoping that people would vote for that, but it's probably a bit of a lost cause at this point. I don't think anybody's gonna want to go back to that, which is a shame because I do think it drives the best. Um, Official Indy 500 queue. Yeah, I was tempted to go again, and I think basically every time I get a chance, like I'll just give it another attempt. But I was pretty happy with that because I was originally, oh wow, I was originally really concerned that I was actually going slower, and I think I was. It's just that the laps, like the laps were way closer together, and lap 4 was way more consistent, so that was cool. Oh no, really? Well, that should be interesting. But hey, man, I guess that's how it works. Like you can key your way in. So, right, let me try and find something. Oh, I suppose Cohen's on. I can send you his way. Join you in the Discord. Yeah, I will do. I'll end this and then I'll come chat. I'll go get a drink and stuff and I'll come and chat. But thank you all for hanging out, and especially you guys who hung around for like the whole thing. Um, I normally seem to get like a constant like 4 or so people who seem to stay the whole thing, so that's really cool. And if anybody does want to watch back stuff, it'll be in the like the video on demand thing anyway, but it'll also be on YouTube afterwards. The set up the lap chart and video will all go on the. They'll all go on both the Discord and the forum thread, and then there'll be another forum thread on Sunday. And Crowder, thank you for gifting the sub, man. We're up to 8 now. I managed to fix the counter. The counter works properly. I'm really trying to get up to 15. I'm hoping we can get like a couple more, but I'm trying like current goal is like 200 followers and like 15 subs, so we'll see how we can get there. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I will send you over to Kerwin. And I will catch you all another time. Maybe Saturday, because we'll stream Indy 500 stuff. That should be some good good rage, if nothing else.
Challenger, thank you for the raid on our last race of the day. Insert that GTA meme. I mean, if he stays behind Rodrigo, then I think we're okay, but... can't tell if I have a big enough gap or not.
I just have that feeling.
How'd you get so bent up?
Like hard left, like. I'm like, there's no way that dude's alive. Well, I don't know. Spoilers. Princess Leia was like in space. Like, I don't even know what that was all about. So if she can like, I don't even know anymore what happens in these movies. I don't even know. Like, fun fact. The actor, the original one isn't with us anymore. Christian! Hi. 2 months, man. Thank you. I mean, EU, like the extended universe? See, I don't know. Super Leah? I that was the one part of the movie I'm like, huh? It was weird, man. It was weird. I didn't wear underwear under the slave getup because George Lucas convinced they don't wear underwear in space. Wait, oh, Leia didn't? Wait, what?
Keep right there.
What?